between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton in November. Way too early to tell, of course. But writing in the New York Times opinion pages, Republican Peter Winter said this about that decision. He said, quote, if Mr. Trump or Mrs. Clinton were the Republican and Democratic nominees, I would prefer to vote for a responsible third-party alternative. Absent that option, I would simply not cast a ballot for president. A lot of Republicans, I suspect, would do the same, unquote. Now, there are other options, such as the Green Party. Let's talk to Dr. Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate for president. And I know you're part of this lawsuit that you brought against the Commission on Presidential Debates, and I want to get into that in just a minute, but I want to give you a chance to talk here. So let's look at some of the issues right off the bat. Stocks are tanking, stock market down 8% just in the first couple weeks of 2016. How do you fix the economy? Dr. Stein, can you hear me?
Okay, sorry, I couldn't hear you for a second. Can you just repeat that question?
Sure. I'm just wondering, how do you, with stocks tanking right now, how would you address the economy? How would you fix it if you were president?
Great, thank you. Yes, I mean, the economy is not working for most Americans now. We've had a huge surge in part-time and temporary jobs. Wages, average for workers, are now just barely above the poverty level. Household wealth has crashed by about 40%. Racial disparities make all of this much worse. We have an entire generation of young people who are locked into debt. So we really need an economy that works for everyday people. And we have two political parties who've been managing that economy that are basically controlled by corporate interests and the super wealthy. So my priority is to create an economy that works for everyone, that puts people over profit instead of profit over people, which is the way it's going. So specifically, I will create a Green New Deal, which is an emergency program like the New Deal that got us out of the Great Depression. The Green New Deal would create 20 million jobs that would green our economy, green our energy, our food, and our transportation systems. And by creating 20 million jobs, these are full-time, living wage jobs, it would revive our economy, it would turn the tide on climate change, and it would make wars for oil obsolete. And in addition, I would bail out the students. We bailed out the bankers. We need to bail out the students who were the victims of that waste, fraud, and abuse on Wall Street.
Who had student loans
and finally, pardon me? Yes.
Okay.
To basically cancel their loans.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
I want to move into national security because obviously ISIS has been in the news and it's frightening an awful lot of people. How would you move forward militarily and how would you handle the national security?
That's a great question because what we see the other two parties and virtually all of their candidates doing is essentially repeating the mistakes of the past and in fact intensifying them. For 14 years we've been conducting a war on terror. It's cost us $6 trillion, which turns out to be $75,000 per household. We have lost tens of thousands of American soldiers either killed or maimed, and we have killed over 1 million people in Iraq alone, so it's no wonder that this has been throwing gasoline on the fires in the Middle East. We need to really change direction here because it has only made terrorism far worse. All of the terrorist forces, Al-Qaeda, Taliban, and now ISIS and their spin-offs are worse. So we're calling for a peace offensive to stop the flow of money and weapons and to focus on what are truly the threats to American lives and well-being. And that is deaths from poverty, from lack of health insurance, homelessness, and gun violence.
Okay, and real quickly, I want to ask you about this lawsuit, again, brought against the Commission on Presidential Debates. You're seeking fair and equal debate time for every candidate, not just Democrats and Republicans. But what is the biggest obstacle you find being in a third party? What do you want this lawsuit to change?
Exactly. I think you put your finger on it because as third parties, it's not just the candidates who are locked out, it's really the voters who are locked out. And in fact, polls show now that 50% of voters do not identify anymore with either Democrats or Republicans. So that's much more who are basically independent voters now, independent or small party. way more of them than there are of Democrats or Republicans. So we need to open up the debates. That's what we're looking to do through this lawsuit, and I encourage people to go to my website and become a part of this, because it's up to us as citizens to open up our democracy so it represents us, and we have more choices and more voices.
Well, Dr. Jill Stein, we appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. And by the way, coming up at 10 a.m. Eastern, we're talking with Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson. If you have any questions you'd like to ask these candidates, just tweet us. Our Twitter handle is @NewDay.